poor little girl washes windows to buy milk. But when the young billionaire sees her hurt hands, he asks, "Who told you to do this?" And her answer brings him to tears. The clock read 7:43 a.m. when Logan Carter locked eyes with his own reflection in the rearview mirror. He didn't like what he saw. The dark circles betrayed another sleepless night, just one of many. He tightened the knot of his navy blue tie, as though that small adjustment could fix not just his attire, but the persistent feeling that something was out of place. It wasn't the tie. The rain fell relentlessly, turning the streets of Boston into dark mirrors. Drops streamed down the BMW's windshield, blurring the city lights into a confused haze. A scene that matched his thoughts perfectly. The windshield wipers moved in their usual rhythm, predictable, automatic, like his life. Meeting at 9, lunch with clients at noon, gym at 6, dinner alone at 8, sleep or try to at 11. The perfect routine for a 38-year-old man who had more digits in his bank account than actual memories. The light turned red. Logan braked and drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. It was the third red light in less than 10 minutes. Traffic was worse than usual. He picked up his phone and checked once more the email he had received the night before. The subject line was straightforward, just as he liked. Johnson and Mayer's merger. Final documents. The deal that had consumed 6 months of his life as a corporate lawyer would close today. He should feel accomplished. It was his biggest case of the year. Yet he felt a hollow sensation in his chest. A movement outside the window caught his attention. At first he thought it was just the rain intensifying, until he made out a small figure approaching. A tiny silhouette, wearing a faded yellow raincoat 3 sizes too big. A child. Instinctively, Logan locked the doors. The city was dangerous, and he had been taught to be wary. The child approached the driver's side window, holding a damp cloth in her small hands. The hood of the coat slipped, revealing the face of a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. "What the hell?" Logan muttered, looking around for a responsible adult nearby. There was no one. The girl began wiping the windshield, making it dirtier rather than cleaner. Her movements were small and clumsy, as if she had just learned the task. Rainwater ran down her face, mingling with what Logan realized, with a lump in his throat, were tears. Something strange stirred inside him, a discomfort unlike any he was used to. It wasn't the irritation of being late, nor the anxiety of big cases, nor even the usual indifference with which he navigated the city's problems. This was something else, something he hadn't felt in so long he had almost forgotten. Indignation. He rolled down the window a few inches, enough to speak, but not enough for the rain to get in. Hey, little girl," he called, surprised at the gentleness in his own voice. She stopped, startled, like a small animal expecting a blow. Her eyes, Logan noticed, were a deep brown, too big for her pale, thin face. "What are you doing here? Where are your parents?" The girl squeezed the wet cloth between her fingers, wringing it nervously. "I'm cleaning your car, sir," she answered in such a low voice that he had to lean forward to hear. "To earn money." Logan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "What's your name?" "Ellie." "Ellie, are you here alone? Where's your mom or dad?" Her gaze dropped. "My mom went to heaven. I live with my stepdad." The light turned green, and the cars behind him began to honk. Logan ignored them. Something about the way she said that kept him from simply handing her a coin and moving on. "Did your stepdad tell you to do this? Stand in the rain cleaning windshields?" She shook her head, sending droplets flying from her wet hair. "He just said I needed to bring money home if I don't." She didn't finish the sentence, but her look said it all. Logan's stomach twisted. The honking increased, but he remained still. "How old are you, Ellie?" Five years old. Walking alone in the rain in traffic on one of the city's busiest avenues. 5 years old and worried about bringing money home. At that moment, Logan knew he couldn't just drive away. What happened next was so out of character for him that later he would question if it had really been him making that decision. "Get in the car, Ellie, I'll take you home." Her eyes grew wide, distrustful. "I'm not going to hurt you," he assured her, with a gentleness he hadn't used in years. "I just want to make sure you get home safely, and I need to talk to your stepdad." After a moment of hesitation, she walked around and climbed in through the passenger door he unlocked. The smell of damp clothing and despair flooded the luxury car's interior. Logan took off his suit jacket and handed it to her. "Here, wrap yourself in this." As he maneuvered out of traffic, Logan tried to organize his thoughts. What was he doing? Taking a stranger's child? It ran contrary to everything he considered sensible, but there was something in her eyes, something that reminded him of himself a long time ago. "Where do you live, Ellie?" "On Parkman Street," she answered, now a bit less tense. "Number 43, apartment 2B. Logan recognized the address. It was in the far eastern part of the city, nowhere near his usual route, a place known for high crime rates and poverty. During the drive, Ellie remained silent, watching the raindrops streaming down the window and tracing their path with her small finger. Occasionally, she seemed lost in thought. "Ellie?" Logan broke the silence. "What happens if you don't bring money home?" She didn't reply right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was even softer. "Roy gets angry. Sometimes he breaks things. Sometimes—" She hesitated. "Sometimes he won't let me eat." Logan gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Indignation now boiled inside him, morphing into a rare anger he seldom allowed himself to feel. In 20 minutes, they arrived at a worn 3-story building. The paint peeled off the walls and several light bulbs in the entryway were burned out. "It's here," Ellie pointed, suddenly apprehensive. "Let's go," said Logan, parking in front of the building. Together they climbed stairs that smelled of mold and cheap disinfectant. On the second floor, Ellie stopped in front of a door with peeling paint and the number 2B hanging by a single nail. "Is this where you live?" She nodded, biting her lower lip. "Do you have a key?" "No, I have to knock." Logan knocked 3 times, nothing. He knocked again, harder. After almost a minute, they heard shuffling steps and the sound of something being knocked over. The door opened, revealing a man about 45 years old, unshaven, with greasy hair and bloodshot eyes. He wore a stained t-shirt and shabby sweatpants. The smell of alcohol was so strong that Logan stepped back. "Who the hell are you?" Roy asked, ignoring Ellie entirely. "My name is Logan Carter. I found Ellie cleaning windshields by herself on Boylston Street in the rain, alone." Roy looked at Ellie as if only now noticing her presence. "So what did you bring?" he asked her, unconcerned about Logan. The girl trembled, clearly afraid. "Nothing, Roy, I'm sorry." The man stepped toward her menacingly. Logan instinctively placed himself between them. "Can we talk?" Logan asked, voice controlled yet firm. Roy spat on the floor. "What's this, social services, the cops? I've got nothing to say." "Neither. I'm just a citizen concerned about a 5-year-old child begging for money in the rain. What I do with her is my problem," Roy retorted, folding his arms. "She lives under my roof, eats my food. She's got to help out." Logan took a deep breath, trying to rein in his anger. "I understand times are hard, but there are other ways, assistance programs." "Listen here, rich boy," Roy interrupted, his alcoholic breath hitting Logan. "I don't need a lecture from anyone, least of all some suit who knows nothing about my life. She has to help out. If she doesn't bring money, she doesn't eat. Simple as that." The words hit Logan like a punch. The cynicism, the casual cruelty. He looked around and noticed for the first time the interior of the apartment. Empty bottles scattered on the floor, leftover food on the table, clothes tossed about. There were no toys, no children's books, nothing to indicate a child lived there, except a small colorful drawing taped to the wall, as out of place as a flower in a desert. He saw Ellie shrink against the wall, clutching his jacket to her chest like a shield. Saw the fear in her eyes, the kind of fear no child should know, and he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "This little girl isn't spending another night here." Roy laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "And who's gonna stop me? You? She's my legal responsibility." Logan took a step forward, surprising even himself with his resolve. If you're truly responsible for her, prove it. Show me the custody documents. Show me she goes to school. Show me she's well taken care of. Roy hesitated, and Logan knew he'd struck a nerve. Go to hell, Roy muttered, staggering slightly. Take her if you want. One less mouth to feed. She always comes back. Nowhere else to go. Logan felt a wave of disgust and pity. This man didn't care about Ellie, not really. She was just a means to get money. He turned to the girl, who watched the scene with wide eyes. He knelt down to her level. Ellie, do you want to come with me? I can take you somewhere safe. She looked from Roy to Logan. A silent battle flickered in those big eyes, fear of the known versus fear of the unknown. Will you send me back? She asked, her voice so small it broke Logan's heart. No, I promise I won't. She nodded slowly, and Logan took her small, cold hand. You're coming with me, now. Roy stepped toward them, but he tripped over an empty bottle and almost fell. This isn't over, he threatened, clinging to the doorframe. I'll come after you, you son of a... Logan didn't wait to hear the rest. He guided Ellie into the hallway, down the stairs, and back to the car, his heart hammering in his chest. What was he doing? Was this kidnapping or a rescue? His lawyer's mind began listing all the laws he was likely breaking. But then he felt Ellie's small hand tighten around his fragile grip, desperate for something to hold, and he knew he couldn't have done anything differently. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. The rain had eased, but the skies remained gray. Logan glanced at Ellie, who looked even smaller in the wide passenger seat. Are you okay? He asked, knowing it was a foolish question. She nodded, staring straight ahead. Where are we going? She finally asked. A simple question, a complicated answer. To my home, Logan said, realizing he was only now thinking of that detail. For now, I'll take care of you, Ellie. No one's sending you into the rain again. No one's going to tell you that you can only eat if you bring money home. As he drove, he tried not to think about the complications that would follow. What his colleagues would say, the legal ramifications, the changes he would have to make. He focused on the present, a 5-year-old girl saved from the rain and hunger, an impulsive decision that defied everything he thought he knew about himself. Stopping at another red light, he glanced over and saw that Ellie had fallen asleep. Her face relaxed for the first time since he found her. The vulnerability of that image hit him like a wave. What was happening to him? The man who lived by numbers, contracts, and predictability now drove home with an unknown child in his luxury car. The light turned green. Logan accelerated gently so as not to wake Ellie. While driving, he realized he had completely forgotten about his meeting, the big merger, everything that had seemed so vital just that morning. Now only one thing mattered, the small being asleep beside him, whose trust he had gained with a promise that he somehow knew would change his life forever. The key turned in the lock with a soft click. Logan pushed the door open and turned on the lights, revealing an apartment that looked like it belonged in a home decor magazine. Minimalist, organized, impeccable. Shades of gray, black, and white dominated the space. Nothing out of place. Come in, he told Ellie, who hovered at the entrance as if afraid to contaminate the immaculate space with her presence. The girl's eyes roamed the open layout. From the door one could see the living room with leather sofas, the gourmet kitchen with a marble countertop, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights beginning to glow at dusk. An entirely different world from apartment 2B on Parkman Street. You live here? Ellie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Logan replied, noticing for the first time how cold the place seemed. Sterile. Come in, let's go. Ellie took a few hesitant steps, still clutching the borrowed jacket to her chest. Her muddy sneakers left small marks on the light hardwood floor, something that, on any other day, would have greatly bothered Logan. Today, he barely noticed. So you must be hungry, he said, heading to the kitchen. He opened the fridge and stared at its nearly empty shelves. A few takeout containers, a bottle of wine, mineral water, and not much else. I don't have much here. I usually order in. Ellie didn't reply. She stood where she was, watching everything intently and warily. How about a sandwich? I have bread and ham-dot cheese, I think. The girl nodded slightly. Logan had the odd feeling she would have agreed to anything he suggested. As he prepared the most basic sandwich possible, Logan tried to organize his thoughts. What had he just done? He had taken a child from her home without any legal authority to do so. Even if the conditions were awful, even if the stepdad was negligent, the law had a process, and he, as an attorney, knew that better than anyone. But then he looked at Ellie, standing like a tiny statue in the middle of his living room, and he knew he couldn't have simply left her in that environment. Here, he said, putting the sandwich on a plate and adding a glass of milk beside it. Come sit down. She approached, climbed onto the tall kitchen stool with some difficulty, and stared at the food as though it were extraordinary. Thank you, she murmured before taking her first bite. She ate slowly, chewing carefully, as if wanting the food to last as long as possible. Logan sat on the other side of the counter, trying not to stare too intently at her, yet unable to look away. There was something mesmerizing about how this small being occupied his space, like a dissonant note in a perfectly orchestrated symphony that somehow made the music more interesting. Do you like cheese? He asked, immediately feeling foolish for asking something so trivial. Ellie nodded, taking a sip of milk. A white mustache formed above her upper lip. Roy never buys cheese, she commented, surprising Logan with the remark. He says it's too expensive. The mention of the stepdad jolted Logan back to the reality of the situation. What would the man do when he realized what had happened? Call the police? That was the most likely reaction. Ellie? Logan began, choosing his words carefully. Do you understand what happened today, why I brought you here? She paused and looked at him with those large, serious eyes. Because Roy is mean, she said simply, and you're nice. The simplicity of her answer disarmed him. Nice. He had never considered himself particularly nice, competent, sure, successful, certainly. But nice? That was a quality he rarely thought about. I just didn't want you staying there, he explained. No child should live like that. Am I going to live here now? She asked, a note of hope in her voice that made Logan's heart constrict. For now, he replied, because he didn't know what else to say. He couldn't make promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Ellie went back to eating, apparently satisfied with the vague answer. Logan realized she was used to not receiving guarantees in life. After the snack, the question of a bath arose. The main bathroom looked intimidating with its deep tub and rainfall shower, so Logan took her to the guest bathroom. Can you bathe on your own? He asked, completely out of his comfort zone. Yes, Ellie replied. But... She hesitated, looking at her worn backpack that they had brought from the apartment. I don't have clean clothes. Logan hadn't thought of that. You can wear one of my t-shirts for tonight. Tomorrow we'll buy you some clothes. While she bathed, with the door slightly ajar at Logan's insistence, worried she might slip or drown, he made 3 phone calls. First to his office, inventing a family emergency to justify his absence. Second to a delivery service, ordering basic groceries, including cereal, fruit and other items he imagined a child would eat. Third, to Rachel Munro, a family law attorney he had worked with on a case years ago. Rachel answered on the 3rd ring. Logan Carter, she said, sounding surprised. To what do I owe the honor after so long? Rachel, I need advice, legal and discreet. A pause. I'm listening. Hypothetically speaking, if someone rescued a child from a clearly abusive environment, what would be the legal implications? Another longer pause. Logan, what have you done? He took a deep breath. Tomorrow, can we meet tomorrow? It's too complicated to explain over the phone. This sounds serious. My office, 9 in the morning. I'll be there, thanks, Rachel. He hung up just in time to hear the shower water turn off. A few minutes later, Ellie emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel far too large for her small frame, her wet hair plastered to her face. Logan handed her a black t-shirt that practically swallowed her. Without the dirty clothes and with clean skin, Bruises on her arms became visible yellowish marks in various stages of healing. Seeing them made Logan clench his teeth. If he had any doubts about his decision, they vanished at that moment. "Are you sleepy?" he asked, checking the time. Almost 9 p.m., late for a 5-year-old, he supposed. Ellie nodded, rubbing her eyes. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, the master and one he used as a home office. Neither was equipped for a child. "You can sleep in my room," he offered. "I'll sleep on the couch." She looked at the leather sofa in the living room. "Can I sleep on the sofa?" she asked. "On the sofa, but the bed's more comfortable." Ellie looked uncomfortable. "It's too big and dark." Logan understood. A strange room, a strange bed. Everything was unfamiliar and possibly frightening. "Okay, the sofa it is." He fetched a pillow and soft blankets, improvising a small bed on the large modular couch. Ellie climbed up and settled in, looking tiny amidst all those blankets. "Want anything else? A glass of milk, maybe?" To his surprise, she nodded. "Warm milk?" "Warm milk," he repeated, heading back to the kitchen. While heating the milk in the microwave, he realized he knew absolutely nothing about taking care of a child. Should he brush her teeth? Read her a story? Leave a light on? He returned with the warm milk in a large mug and found her gazing out the window, watching the city lights. When she noticed him, she quickly returned to the sofa. "Here you go." She took the mug with both hands, blowing on the surface before taking a small sip. "Thank you," she said softly. Logan sat on the edge of the sofa, feeling strangely out of place in his own home. "Ellie," he began, unsure how to broach the subject, "tomorrow I'm going to speak with a lawyer friend. She's going to help us." "Are you going to send me back?" Ellie interrupted, her eyes suddenly alarmed. "No," Logan assured her quickly. "I promised, remember, but we need to do things the right way so that nobody can take you back." She seemed to accept the explanation, though a shadow of worry lingered on her face. She kept sipping her milk in small gulps. You know," Logan said, trying to distract her, "I've never had anyone sleep on this sofa before. You're my first visitor in a very long time." "You don't have friends?" Ellie asked, childlike frankness catching him off guard. Logan gave a small smile. "I have co-workers. Not really the same thing." "I didn't have friends at my school," she commented, looking at her milk. "The other kids said I smelled bad." The simplicity with which she stated this made Logan's heart ache. "Which school did you go to?" "I was in kindergarten at Sunnybrook, but Roy said it was too expensive even though it was public. He didn't like getting up early to take me." Logan made a mental note to look into that school tomorrow. If she wasn't currently enrolled anywhere, that could complicate things further. Ellie finished her milk and handed the mug back to Logan. Her eyes were heavy with sleep. "Time for bed," he said, adjusting the blankets around her. Hesitating, he added, "If you need anything during the night, just call me. I'll be in the bedroom, first door on the right." She nodded, settling between the pillows. "Do you want me to leave a light on?" he asked, remembering his own childhood fear of the dark something he hadn't recalled in decades. "Yes, please," she replied, voice almost a whisper. Logan left the lamp on the side table lit, adjusting it to its lowest level. The soft glow created a cozy circle around the sofa, like a small island of safety. "Good night, Ellie." "Good night, Logan." He walked away, hesitated, then returned. For some reason, he felt he should say or do something more, but what? He ended up just adjusting the blanket again and heading to his room, leaving the door open so he could hear her if she called. Once in bed, Logan couldn't sleep. His mind raced, conjuring and discarding scenario after scenario, assessing risks, planning next steps. Beneath all that frenetic mental activity, one question persisted. What had changed in him? What had driven him to act so impulsively, so contrary to his analytical nature? The apartment's silence, once so familiar and comfortable, now felt different. It was a silence inhabited, filled by the breathing presence of another human being, a presence so small, yet so transformative. Some time later, when he was finally starting to drift off, he heard a faint sound. He rose immediately and went to the living room. Ellie was sitting on the sofa, knees pulled up, eyes wide in the dim light. "Are you okay?" he asked, approaching carefully so as not to startle her. She shook her head. "I had a bad dream." Logan sat beside her, unsure what to do. After a moment of hesitation, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Want to talk about it?" Ellie looked at him, weighing whether she could trust him. "It was about my mom," she finally said. "I dreamed she was calling for me, but I couldn't find her." Compassion flooded Logan. "You miss her a lot, don't you?" She nodded, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What was she like, your mom?" A small smile appeared on Ellie's face, as fragile as the first ray of sun after a storm. "She was beautiful. She used to sing to me before bed. She braided my hair." The use of the past tense did not go unnoticed by Logan. He wanted to ask more how her mother had died, how she ended up with that awful stepdad, but he didn't want to push. "She sounds wonderful," he said softly. "She's in heaven now," Ellie said, with the simple conviction of a child. "That's what the nurse told me, that she went to heaven and that she watches over me from there." "A nurse?" Logan couldn't help asking. "From the hospital," Ellie explained, as if it were obvious. "Mum was in the hospital for a long time. She was always tired and thin, so thin you could see her bones." "Cancer?" Logan thought immediately, "or some other degenerative disease. And after she went to heaven, you stayed with Roy?" Ellie nodded. "He was Mom's boyfriend, but he doesn't like me much. He only stayed with me because Mom asked him to." "And when was that, Ellie? Do you remember?" She frowned, concentrating. "It was in the winter. There was snow, lots of snow. A few months then," Logan calculated. "The last heavy snow had been in January. Do you draw your mom sometimes to remember her?" Ellie's face lit up. "Yes, I draw her every day so I don't forget what she looks like." "Would you like to draw now?" Logan suggested, thinking it might help calm her after the nightmare. "I have paper and some colored pens in my office." Ellie hesitated. "Can I really?" "Of course." He fetched a pad of paper and some colored pens he used for marking documents. Not proper art supplies, but they would do. Ellie sat on the coffee table and began to draw with intense concentration, tongue peeking out between her lips as she worked. After a few minutes, she turned the paper to show him. The drawing was simplistic, as one would expect from a 5-year-old, but it had a surprising emotional quality. A female figure with long hair and a big smile, wearing what appeared to be a floral dress. "That's my mom," Ellie explained. "Sarah, she liked flowers. She had a flower dress that was her favorite." "It's a lovely drawing," Logan said, genuinely impressed. "You draw very well for your age." Ellie grinned, the first real smile he'd seen on her face. "Can I draw some more?" she asked, suddenly excited, the first time she had been so since he found her. "As many as you want." She leaned over the paper again, starting another drawing. This time it showed 2 figures, the same woman and a small girl holding hands. "That's me and Mom," she explained. "At the park. We used to go every Sunday before she got sick." "What did you do at the park?" "We fed the ducks. She pushed me on the swing. Sometimes she bought ice cream, but it was a secret because the doctor said she couldn't have sweets." As Ellie continued drawing and recounting small stories about her mother, Logan realized he was witnessing something precious. Ellie was not only sharing her memories, but also forging a connection with him, a fragile bridge of trust. "Roy doesn't like my drawings," she said as she started a third one. "He says it's a waste of time and paper once he tore them all up." Anger flared again in Logan's chest. "Well, I like your drawings, and here you can draw as much as you want." She looked at him, eyes shining. "Promise?" "I promise." Ellie returned to her drawing, more relaxed now. This new one showed a house, not the depressing apartment where she lived with Roy, but a little house with a chimney, a garden, and a smiling sun in the sky. "That was our house before," she explained. "When Mom got sick, we had to sell it and move to a smaller apartment. That's when Roy moved in with us. To help pay the rent," Mom said. The pieces were falling into place. A single mother, gravely ill with no resources, A boyfriend who offered to help, maybe initially with good intentions, maybe not. And when she died, he stayed with the daughter, likely just an informal arrangement, possibly not even legal. "Ellie, do you go to school now?" Logan asked, trying to understand her current situation better. She shook her head. "Roy said it's too far and that I'll go next year, but I liked school. Miss Miller gave me gold stars on my drawings." Another issue to address, Logan thought. A 5-year-old should be in school. Ellie's eyes began to droop again, her pencil moving more slowly on the paper. "I think it's time to go back to bed," he suggested gently. She didn't protest, carefully putting the pens away before returning to the sofa. Logan tucked her in again. "Can I keep my drawings?" she asked sleepily. "Of course. We'll leave them right here on the table so you can see them when you wake up." She smiled, eyes already closing. "Thanks, Logan." "You're welcome, Ellie." Logan stayed there watching as she fell asleep. Her face, once tense and cautious, now relaxed, almost serene. The change was remarkable. He returned to his bedroom but left the door fully open this time. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything he had learned. An orphaned girl, left in the care of a man who clearly saw her as a burden, maybe even a source of income. A child with no school, no protection, no one to stand up for her. Until now. Logan closed his eyes, aware that his life had changed irreversibly in the last 12 hours. The man who woke up that morning lonely, focused only on his career, living an orderly and predictable existence, no longer existed. In his place stood a man with a little girl sleeping on his couch, a man who had made a promise he wasn't sure how to fulfill, but was determined to keep. The last thing he thought before falling asleep was Ellie's drawing of the little house with the smiling sun. It wasn't just a memory of her past, he realized. It was also a hope for the future, a safe home. And somehow, however unlikely, he wanted to be part of that future. Rachel Monroe's office occupied the 10th floor of a building in the financial district. Unlike the cold corporate style that dominated most law firms in the city, this office had a welcoming air. Real plants in the corners, colorful paintings on the walls, and a genuinely smiling receptionist. Logan held Ellie's hand while they waited in the lobby. The girl was especially quiet that morning, perhaps sensing his tension. She wore new clothes, just a simple outfit he had bought at the nearest department store as soon as it opened. Nothing fancy, just the basics so she wouldn't have to wear the same clothes as the day before. "Mr. Carter," the receptionist called, "Dr. Monroe will see you now." Logan stood, adjusting his tie in a nervous gesture. "Come on, Ellie." Rachel was standing when they walked into her office. A woman in her 40s with short brown hair, red-framed glasses, and a shrewd smile. Her gaze quickly assessed Logan, then settled on Ellie with professional interest. "Logan," she greeted, extending her hand. "It's been a while." Then she leaned down slightly, meeting Ellie's eye level. "And you must be Ellie. It's very nice to meet you." Ellie partially hid behind Logan's leg, just giving a shy wave. "Please have a seat," Rachel said, motioning to the chairs. "Logan, I have to say I'm curious. When you called yesterday, I pictured many scenarios, but none of them involved you showing up with a child." Logan took a deep breath and began telling everything from the moment he saw Ellie cleaning windshields in the rain, to the confrontation with Roy and the impulsive decision to bring her along. Rachel listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting down notes, her face maintaining a neutral, professional expression. "And last night she told me about her mother," Logan concluded. "Sarah. She died recently, apparently from a serious illness. Roy was just the boyfriend, not the biological father. And from what I understand, Ellie isn't even in school right now." Rachel nodded, setting her pen on the notepad. She looked at Ellie, who was flipping through a magazine on the coffee table. "Ellie, sweetheart, would you mind waiting outside with Denise, our receptionist? She has some children's books and maybe some colored pencils for you to draw with. I need to talk to Mr. Logan about grown-up things." The girl looked at Logan for approval. He nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, I'll be right here and I can see you through the glass door." Ellie agreed silently and left the office. Rachel waited until the door closed to speak again. "Logan," she began, her tone serious, "I'll be direct, what you did was technically kidnapping." Logan felt his stomach sink, though he had expected as much. "I know your intentions were good," she continued, "and from what you've described, the girl's situation was precarious, possibly abusive. But there are legal procedures for these cases. You should have contacted Child Protective Services." "And what would they have done?" Logan asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "Placed her in a shelter? Or worse, sent her back to Roy while they investigated? You know how the system works, Rachel. It's slow and flawed." Rachel sighed, removing her glasses and rubbing the bridge of her nose. "Yes, the system is imperfect, but now we're in a tricky spot. If that man Roy decides to report Ellie's disappearance, you'll be the prime suspect. After all, you went to his house and left with the girl." Logan felt a shiver run down his spine. He practically said he didn't care one less mouth to feed. "That may work in our favor, but it doesn't remove the legal issue." Rachel put her glasses back on. "Logan, I'm going to ask some tough questions. Are you prepared for what's ahead? Because it won't be easy." He nodded firmly. "If we file for temporary custody on your behalf, it'll be a battle. There will be investigations, social workers, hearings. Your life will be turned upside down, your background, finances, home, everything will be scrutinized." "I'm aware. Do you have any experience with children? Any nieces, godchildren?" Logan hesitated. "No, I'm an only child and my few close friends don't have kids." Rachel studied him for a moment. "Why are you doing this, Logan, really? We've known each other long enough, to be honest." The question surprised him, not because he lacked an answer, but because he didn't know how to articulate it. I can't fully explain," he began, searching for the right words. "When I saw her in the rain, so small and vulnerable, something changed in me. Then seeing how she lived, how that man treated her." He shook his head, frustrated by his inability to convey his feelings. "She doesn't deserve that, Rachel. Nobody does, especially not a child. And if I can do something, I should. It's the right thing." Rachel watched him in silence for a few seconds, as though gauging his sincerity. "Well," she finally said, "at least your motivation seems genuine. But you must understand that the authorities won't care about your feelings. They'll want to know if you can take care of a child. You do have financial stability. That's not an issue. But do you have time, willingness, patience? Kids need far more than money and good intentions, Logan. I know, and I'm willing to learn to adapt. I already have, in fact." Rachel gave a small smile. "I've noticed. I never imagined seeing you holding a child's hand, let alone buying children's clothes." Logan glanced through the glass door. Ellie was in the reception area, drawing something with intense focus. "What about immediate legal matters?" he asked, turning back to Rachel. "What do we do next?" "First," she grabbed a new notepad, "we gather all the information we can. The mother's full name, exact date of death, hospital where she was treated. We need to find out if there's any official documentation giving Roy custody, or if it was just a verbal arrangement. And we need info on Roy himself, full name, criminal record, if he has any legal right to the girl." Logan nodded, mentally trying to recall what Ellie had mentioned. "Second," Rachel continued, "we file for an emergency temporary custody petition citing risk. That'll give you some legal standing while we investigate further. For that, we need to document the conditions she lived in and any signs of abuse or neglect." "She has bruises," Logan remembered. "There are marks on her arms. We need a doctor to examine and officially document that. I know some who serve as experts in custody cases. I'll schedule an appointment today if possible." Rachel made a few more notes. "And we need Ellie evaluated by a child psychologist. That will help establish her emotional state and corroborate any accounts of mistreatment." The list of tasks was growing, and Logan felt overwhelmed but also relieved to have a concrete plan. "It'll be costly," Rachel warned, "not just financially but in time and emotional energy. Are you truly ready for this?" Logan looked at Ellie through the glass door again. She had finished a drawing and was proudly showing it to the receptionist, who smiled and praised her work. "I am," he answered with a certainty he didn't know he possessed until that moment. "We'll do whatever it takes." Rachel smiled, warmer now. "Great, because I'll need a fully committed client to win this battle." She stood, indicating the consultation was over. "I'll start the legal procedures